So I made a video about Ye a few days ago, and when the album first came out, and it was first going through my head, but over the last few days, I've been listening to it a lot more, and I've gotten more organized thoughts about it that I kind of wanted to share because I think these are very interesting ideas I've realized by listening to it more and more and more, and obviously with the Kids See Ghosts that just came out, I need to just have all my thoughts in Ye laid out on paper so I can move on to thinking more about Kids See Ghosts because I couldn't give Kids See Ghosts the amount of attention I had without fully exploring Ye. So I went to listen to it more times and I have more thoughts about it. So what's very interesting about Kanye West's Ye is that if you look at his Twitter or whatever, he has this subheading called Spiritual Awakening, and the spiritual awakening here is very much you need to kind of think about it when you listen to the album. And I kind of realized from looking through the track list and listening to all the songs again that there is a very strong story consistently see throughout the whole thing thematically. It seems like there are a couple of motifs that goes through the album. One of them is his move from the internal to the external, right? So he opens up with literally thoughts in his head to the externalization of his realizations and feelings towards his own daughter. I'll go through the songs later, but that's one of the themes, one of the motifs that goes through. Another one is his his use of voice, right? So Kanye West, as you've kind of everyone knows, and if you look through, there are many video essays about how he uses voice, how he manipulates voice to achieve certain kinds of means, certain kinds of ends. Obviously, his manipulation of voice maybe reaches its kind of peak at 808s, and perhaps as well in Yeezus, but here he uses voice very interestingly as well. He uses a lot of these chopped up nightmarish auditory sounds that sound very much like hallucinations. And it ends with, from using those chopped up scary sounds, very dark sounds, he ends the album with bright angelic voices by 70 Shake, right? It goes through the album, I'll talk about it more later. So from darkness to lightness to brightness, just brightness and sound as well, with brightness thematically with his music. And those are very interesting things that kind of go through the whole album, and I'll kind of go through the songs. So the first one, I thought about killing you. It's very much obviously, it opens up with his internal monologue about and like a bringing up to speed to the fans, to the public, whoever's listening to this album, where he is at mentally, or where he was at mentally, which was this. He talks about his being bipolar. He talks about his depression, his suicidal ideations. I thought about killing you, and I love myself more than I love you. So if I thought about killing myself, then obviously he wants to kill you. And he talks about him being bipolar and talks about his just. Again, it acts as this introduction to his state of mind. And what I found very interesting about it is that it opens up with these very weird sounds that at first I didn't really understand. It took me to Genius, where they say that it's actually saying "I know" over and again. I know, I know, I know. The words "I know" turn to be it turns into like the rhythm or of the song. At first I thought I heard "I know." At first I thought I heard "no one," and then I read online it was "I know," but it sounds very similar. "I know" and "no one." And it's very scary, and the sounds are very much. It sounds like at the back of his head. The sounds are just, repetitive and blaring and blaring and blaring, and it sounds. And it reminds me of this of these auditory hallucinations, right? It sounds like he was hearing voices in his head, and when the beat drops halfway through the song and he goes into his more traditional rapping, the voices kind of fade a bit to the background, but the voices are still there under the beat, which is quite scary, I think. And it's him painting a picture of his mind state, I think. And then it directly goes into the song Yikes, which I feel like it's impossible to really engage with Kanye West's album or his without discussing his bringing up of psychedelic drugs, which it opens up with the choruses, tweaking on the 2CB. How 2CB is a psychedelic derivative drug. I think it might have been one of Shulgin's drugs, but I don't remember from off the top of my head. But 2CB is a psychedelic drug, synthesized drug, and then you have DMT, which is another one of these. It's a more powerful. For those who are unfamiliar with differences, 2CB is more traditionally a longer lasting drug. DMT is like if you smoke it, I think it lasts like at most like 30 minutes or something, and it's very intense. It's an intense experience. From what I read online, and I forgot the line exactly, but he talks about DMT and like reawakening or coming back to life or something on DMT. So his mind kind of goes into this nightmarish mode, and what I think it seems to represent is that he seems like he's not only is it a drug trip of the song, but it seems like a bad experience, a bad drug trip, a bad trip of sorts, and he is just battling with all these demons, and you can hear it sonically. The chopped up voices that was kind of in the background of I thought about killing you is into the forefront on this song. If you listen to the instrumentals, it's kind of nightmarish and ghoulish. Though I think Yikes might be, and it's a song's called Yikes, so I think it might be a bad trip. So he goes through all these things in his head, a very crazy experience, and feels like he's being reborn to some degree. And then it leads into the song All Mine, which for many people, I think some people have looked at All Mine as this kind of a weak point of the album with regards to the lyrical content, but I disagree completely, because I think it very perfectly is about it's like he kind of writes a character, sort of his part of himself that is filled with urges for sex, filled with these tendencies that of maybe controlling or women, or being just erratic and also to some degree, and being very being very controlling, and literally in the chorus of the song, which I forgot who is Valet, I think is the person who sings it. It's a very sticky chorus, but then he on the song he mentions the medulla oblongata, which also I think was the original title of the song, one of Kanye's tweets on the board. But the medulla oblongata, it's raining, I'm sorry for the sound, but the medulla oblongata, for those who are unfamiliar with it, is the part of the brain that regulates, or not really regulates, but it is in charge of the involuntary actions of the brain. So it's like breathing and and heartbeat and stuff like that. And I think Kanye just brings it up in this part of the album, because he's trying to tell you about how there's so many parts of himself that maybe are not the best of sorts, maybe are not the most things he's the most proud of, but a lot of this is for him. He thinks it's involuntary actions from himself. He has no control over his own feelings and his own experiences and his own ways of thinking, because it's involuntary. Partly, he references he's bipolar, so when you're bipolar, you're prone to instability, and the song's very much about that. His instability, his involuntary responses to things. I know people are shitting on the calm line. I think it's actually kind of funny, but just all the instability and involuntary extremities of his experience, of his life, of his ways of just acting, is put to the forefront in this song. And you still get these weird. That's what I was noticed when I listened to the album again today. You get these weird breathing, weird voice things happening in the background. There's this kind of breathing thing, like a going over and over in the background, which maybe reference. It's a reference maybe to the medulla oblongata, because it regulates breathing, but also just I think it comes off like Yikes, and I thought about killing you, the same kind of weird vocally chopped up nightmarish vocally sounds. Then after this first three songs, an exploration of where his state is, where his state of right now, where his state was, and how crazy everything has been, and how he feels a lot of his things are very involuntary. Maybe he feels he doesn't have control over his own body. It brings us to the present. It brings us directly to the TMZ thing, and Wouldn't Leave in the next song, where it's very much about the actual experience of him going on TMZ and saying, slavery was a choice, and the song is not necessarily about why he said that, but it's about the aftermath of it, which was his wife breaking down, crying, Kim, and her just being also disheveled and sad and in tears, and wondering if things were going to fall apart for her in her life. And just, it was like the outcome of all his personal struggles over the last few years. And what happened after all of that was that Kim said she wouldn't leave him, that she would stay by him even though, and this is actually very true. Over the last few weeks, if you go through the social media sphere, and the media sphere, Kanye is very erratic, and he's saying all these things, but the one consistent thing going through was that Kim Kardashian was always sticking by him and trying to rationalize, trying to be his own spokesperson because Kanye wasn't his best, and she always stuck by him, and she never said anything bad about him, which I think was very surprising for me. But it was that's what kind of was it's a turning point of the album, and the turning point of which Kanye is finally realizing that, you know, how much love he has in this world, right? That his wife loves him so much that she wouldn't leave. And all his instability was grounded with the reassurance from love from Kim. And the song you get is very nice. It's not a sample, but it's actually Party Next Door singing the opening thing, and it's very good. It's very soulful and very melodic and very majestic. And if you notice, and this one wouldn't leave, you don't hear any more of this weird nightmarish vocal samplings. It's very no more of that. That kind of took over the last three songs. It's very clean. It's soulful, and if you actually notice at the very end, you hear these twinkling sounds at the very end, which I noticed on my last listen, and it seems like, you know, it's like a twinkling, sounds like sounds of twinkling, sounds of things getting better, things of hope of things changing, and it leads straight into the next song, which is like a response to what it leave, no mistakes, you know. Hey, no mistakes, I still love you, or something. And on this song, you get this it opens up with a soul sample, and it brings you back to the old Kanye, College Dropout Kanye. This is the song that, when you hear it, it reminded me so much of College Dropout and Late Registration Kanye. It reminded me of the Kanye that he kind of supposedly disintegrated or moved away from in Life of Pablo's, you know, the old Kanye song. He's a new Kanye, but in this song in his place of perfect, finally he gets some stability in his life with the love of his wife. He suddenly reverts back to the old Kanye. He raps like the old Kanye. He's happy like the old Kanye. And towards the end, actually, what I noticed from the song, if you listen very carefully, towards the very end of the song, there are these very slight there's a female voice that kind of, the very high pitched female voice that goes up and up like an angel of sorts at the very end. First, I think it's the first like female voice on the album, but it's very slight, and you hear towards the end of the song, and it goes into my favorite track of the album, Ghost Town, where you finally get this full-fledged, we're done with the nightmarish auditory hallucinatory sounds, this darkness, and then you finally get this majestic, bright, angelic voice of 70 Shake, and it's so melodic in a way that the first half of the album wasn't as much. So, and I'm not sure necessarily who he's referring to in the song, if he's talking to the audience, if he's talking to himself, if he's talking to God or whatever, but he talks about his songs, you know, he talks about all his last few songs of struggling, his life of struggling, and his bipolar disorder. After all that struggle, he finally feels free. He doesn't feel the pain anymore. He's filled with love and stability to some degree, and he just feels so free. And arguably, people talk about his like, he keeps talking about free thought, and people are criticizing him for that. But I understand to a certain degree for him, he just feels like he's gone through so much mentally, internally, and now he just filled with love, and he feels so free to think, free thought, free to just live his life and be happy. And it's grounded by a very strong female voice, like an angel of sorts. The female voice is the savior of the album, savior of his mental state. It's a great song. You get a Hootie, Kid Cudi verse and all this stuff. It's very great. And then it's Kanye not even rapping on the song. He's actually singing. That's how happy he is. He's singing in the song the whole time, singing some of the best singing that I've ever heard him sing, and he just feels kind of free. You know, he feels like a kid again. And now he's just finally content and happy with his life. Which transitions to the last song of the album, of Violent Crimes, where he fully transitions from this little internal, I thought about killing you, I thought about, well, this darkness, dark place. Finally, it is expressed externally, and now it's about his family, and then now finally about the future of his daughter. And the whole song's an ode to his daughter in a similar way to Only One was, but now she's a bit older. And talks about the future, and he talks about how he's thinking about having to care for his daughter, and how the struggles his daughter will probably have to face, and how he'll have to deal with it. But it's a very hopeful song, and it's filled with love and filled with care. And again, it's grounded by a female vocal performance by 70 Shake. And it ends with this clip of Nicki Minaj. Interestingly, perhaps Kanye West is setting up like an example of a female figure that he hopes his daughter will resemble. His relationship with Nicki Minaj has obviously changed a lot over the last few years, but I'm sure they have a very great relationship with each other, and perhaps Kanye West sees Nicki Minaj as a possible example of a woman who had to go through a lot of adversity throughout her life, but eventually came out the other side and became successful by having control over her own body and over herself. And I think that's what happens at the end of the album when he brings Nicki Minaj on it. It's just like a references. Maybe here's an example of a woman who I know personally who's done very well for herself and who is a good person, and I hope that you end up like her. So yeah, that's Kanye West DA. I'm a big fan of it, and I'm very excited to listening more to Kids See Ghosts. So I hope this video is in any way kind of made you think about certain things that you probably might have missed out or didn't think so much about, or maybe hopefully it helped you think in a different way about the album, because I know a lot of people are looking at it and hoping to hear like the bangers of the last few albums, and they're kind of surprised by this album's lack of it, and they are maybe underwhelmed by the length. But I think it's actually it's a perfect length, I think, and I'm a big fan of the structure of the album. I'm a big fan of how the songs relate to each other in a way thematically, and the things that you really hear, from the darkness, the lightness, the brightness, the certain vocal distortions that change throughout the album, use of voice. It's just all of these things help me appreciate the album more, and I hope it helped you appreciate it more as well. So yeah, Kids See Ghosts, I'm looking forward to that.